Welcome to episode 68 of the Two Pat Stack podcast. I'm your host, Ace, once again, alongside me, Jake Reiser. Once again, Jake, how's it going, dude?
Yeah, it's going. This is really the dog days of hockey season. You're in kind
Mm.
of like the weird bubble world. You know, the trade deadline's coming up. Teams are deciding what to do, what not to do, but you're still just kind of like floating out in the ether, waiting for a lot of activity to happen, and you're just not there yet. But we're so far in.
Yeah, I mean, we're really on the precipice of the silly season for NHL, in-season trades. The trade deadline as the time at the time that we're recording this is 11 days away. So, you're going to see a lot of shuffling from the contenders that are trying to add. You're going to see sellers that are going to try to liquidate some of their assets for draft capital and prospects. And I think that this deadline is going to be a pretty interesting one just because there are so many teams that are still in the hunt. It hasn't really separated the really clear buyers and the really clear sellers as much as maybe it has in seasons past.
Absolutely. The Eastern Conference is astounding with how many teams are on the bubble. The Western Conference, I feel like, is always a dogfight. I feel like the last few years, there's always a calamity at the top for division winners. So it's really interesting to see how many teams and how many different teams are in it this year. Teams you might not have expected at the beginning of the season who are competing, and some not even competing, but thriving and like playing for top seeds. So it's really exciting. Silly season will be a big topic next week. We're just not there yet, which
hmm
is so unfortunate.
Yeah, well, I mean, the big piece of news that we're going to spend some time on right now is obviously Four Nations gets wrapped up. Canada secures the win in overtime. Some of the worst defensive positioning I've seen um, there by the Americans in overtime. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd be choosing Connor McDavid to be the guy that I would leave all alone in the slot like that. But
Is that not
um,
McDavid 101? Do not leave him alone. Do not leave him alone in the middle of the ice. Do not leave him alone in the middle of the ice and give him uninterrupted time to shoot. Like, I watched the whole play and I'm looking at Adam Fox get trapped below the goal line. And I'm thinking, why are you not out in front of the net? Who cares what's going on behind the goal line? Get in the slot, block your grade A shots. Like, these guys in Canada have the best offensive weapons in the country. McDavid, McKinnon, Crosby, even McCarr from the point can come down and shoot from the slot. Just protect your grade A chances. And they just totally faltered.
Yeah, they just folded up like a cheap tent. It was wild for me to see that. And I mean, it was only fitting. And I saw a meme and I laughed about it. And we'll get the Bruins talk in a little bit, but I laughed about it because there was a nice little graphic that was put out pregame. And Austin Matthews is saying, "Oh, it's like a game 7. This is our game 7." And I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, "Oh, Austin Matthews in game 7's in Boston. This isn't going to go the Americans' way."
He is 0-7 in proverbial elimination games now in his career. He's got to be cursed somehow.
That's so funny, so funny. So yeah, congratulations to Brad Marchand and Team Canada for getting the dub on at TD Garden. I didn't like the fact that the NHL flexed out Todd Angeli from the anthem position for this game to put in the Boston Pops. Now I like the Boston Pops, but that's not really like an anthem for me. I want to have somebody in there, and especially rewarding a guy like Todd with nationwide coverage. I think was definitely the better route to take.
Todd did such a good job in the semis too. Loved the suit, loved seeing the French cuffs. He was poised, he was confident out there, and he is Boston. Our anthem singers are our anthem singers. Renee did it for so many years.
hmm
Mr. Rancourt always, and then Todd took over, kind of impromptu. He got snatched up from the bar, on the press level by the Nesson booth, and that was his audition. And I guess he did well enough, but he's become the anthem singer, and so I feel bad for him that that spot got taken from him in prime time.
Yeah, it really sucks. I mean, I will give him credit though. Like he's got a lot of fans in the Garden, and he was able to parlay it into even. Every time I go to a NASCAR race in New Hampshire, he's doing the anthem at the NASCAR races now too, which is a lot of fun. So, but yeah, all right. So Four Nations is done. It was great to see Boston represented on an international hockey stage. A lot of people that maybe don't spend a lot of time in Boston came and were able to experience our city, and it seemed to be really well received, which was fantastic. So I was really happy to see that, and I think that the Bruins did a good job of hosting this event. And unfortunately, we got to go back to reality and watch the Boston Bruins on the ice again. which is just weird to say for me. Like I'm so used to just having a competitive team night in and night out, and every game is a entertaining watch, and it's really a rewarding experience to be a Bruins fan. And just it doesn't quite feel that way these days. And maybe I'm being pessimistic, maybe I'm being negative, but I guess my perspective when I first saw the schedule after the Four Nations break, and I saw it was the Anaheim Ducks who were coming to town, I was like, "Well, that's a nice little matchup for you. That's a winnable game." And I'm not saying the Ducks are tremendously bad, but it's not like they're a top tier, contending team. It's not like the Edmonton Oilers rolling in or the Florida Panthers coming into town. That's a winnable game. So a good way to kind of just ease back out of it. Um, so Ducks come in and the Bruins play one of the worst first periods I have seen them play in a long time, and they've played a lot of crappy first periods this season. What was your kind of initial takeaway from the beginning of this game, Jake?
Are we sure that the Bruins actually showed up to start this game and weren't still on holiday? Just their 5-on-5 offense is completely anemic. Their discipline just went away. The first goal that they gave up, I know it's technically even strength, but it was 4-on-4. Mason Lohrei gets caught making a bad pinch, and that's just a rookie mistake, but it leads to a 2-on-1 and an easy shot for Zegras, who has one of the better shots in the league. So giving an on-man rush to those guys doesn't work. And then that second goal, just a beautiful clap pass down to Vetrano, who's left basically uncovered on the far side. So
And that's
I
not a
don't know.
skilled defenseman that made that play. That's like, I mean, obviously he's their captain, Radko Gudas, but he's usually known for his physicality and defensive zone play. So really nice idea by Gudas to find that backdoor tap in.
And once again, we find the Bruins behind the 8 ball, putting themselves in difficult situations that it feels like they can't climb themselves out of. It's infuriating. And you think that you come into this game, not to say Anaheim's an easy team. They've got a good core, an up and coming core. Maybe not, which is funny to say that the Sharks maybe are outpacing them because the Sharks have better pieces. But the Ducks aren't necessarily just a walk in the park as much as they're not one of the best teams in the league at all. But it's like they came in, and I don't know whether they overestimated them or whether the Bruins blue line deficiencies and injuries are just really killing them. But it looked like men against boys for the first period, and it was just embarrassing.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw that the Bruins, I think I saw the stat that they were just getting dominated at the faceoff dot too, which is really kind of concerning. But what really stood out to me is that you mentioned that the offense is anemic right now, and I have to agree. It seems like there's only one line that's able to generate any kind of sustained pressure, and that's the Geeky Zaka David Pasternak line, and that line goes as David Pasternak goes. I mean, it was good for us to see that the Bruins were able to take advantage of some of their, plethora of power play opportunities. They had a nice 5-on-3 strike where Elias Lindholm actually got a nice one-timer off the far side pass from David Pasternak. I swear, David Pasternak looks like I've said this before, looks like he's channeling his inner David Krejci every single night these days with some of these beautiful playmaking plays that he's going out and doing. And anytime you can have a lethal sniper add that great playmaking to their toolkit, it's just going to open up so many more options for your team. So, um,
It's not just
they,
about goals, it's how the goals get into the net. And so if you can contribute anywhere you can, as much as you're a superstar and should be scoring a bunch of goals, you can put assists on your radar. Damn, that makes you even scarier.
Absolutely, and then you're gonna have that level of uncertainty. Okay, if I overcommit to trying to block his shot, that's gonna open up a lane, and David Pastrnak can pass the puck as just as good as everyone, and that's gonna do wonders for everybody on that line. So, they were all cooking there. Elias Lindholm, beautiful goal, stuck between the wickets there, just barely went over the line, and it looked like I don't know if this was the play, but John Gibson ended up not returning after the first period, and Lucas Dostal, however you pronounce it,
Dostal.
Dostal entered the game for the second period. And I don't know, do you think it was that goal maybe that injured Gibson? I haven't heard any confirmation on that.
Just upper body injury from what I've heard. So I don't think it was that goal necessarily, but man, that dude is just so injury prone and it's
Yeah.
so unfortunate.
And especially with the trade deadline right around the corner. I mean, it seems like it's an annual tradition at this point for his name to pop up in trade rumors. And I guess that's what happens when your team's been in a rebuild for so long and you kind of fit outside that maybe age window where you're trying to build a competitive roster with. But I think it would be fun to see Gibson on a, just speaking as okay, I'm going to project forward. Right now, the stats aren't in the Bruins' favor. I'm going to project forward and say the Bruins will not make the playoffs. But I think seeing John Gibson on a team like the Carolina Hurricanes would be a lot of fun.
As much as he doesn't get as injured as Freddie Anderson, it'd be
Yeah,
great
ain't that
for
the
him.
truth?
That's ironic that you bring this up because before we recorded, while the moves are rumored to not be interconnected, the Anaheim Ducks did just trade for Ville Husso from the Detroit Red Wings, so they just got some more depth goaltending in their system, someone who can be NHL caliber when he's healthy. So I'm very intrigued to see, while they're saying it doesn't have anything to do with Gibson, maybe it does.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously does have something to do with Gibson, mainly just insurance until he heals.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if you're Anaheim, why hold on to Gibson at this point? You could probably get at least a second round pick for the guy from somebody out there, and you open that up for Dostal, who's been just as good, if not better than Gibson at this point of this year.
And I
So,
think it's
anyways,
smart to protect him by getting Husso, take some of the weight off of his shoulders as much as he's playing like a number one. He's playing great hockey, as you said. You know, it's good for development to have someone who can step in and, take the weight off every now and then.
what I want to know though in this trade is why the hell would the Anaheim Ducks accept just future considerations for that?
You mean
Like,
Detroit?
yeah, why
Ca
is Detroit like
Cap,
Detroit's
probably. It's the Yzer
well,
plan.
Detroit
Who
gets to
knows?
clear cap. They get to clear 3.5 something million in cap for nothing. Like,
Yeah.
why is Anaheim not charging for that? Like, that is something I just feel like compared to historic seasons, that price of cap bailouts has it's just gone. It's disappeared. It's gone to the ether. So
Future
um
considerations must be a really bad player to just get traded every single deadline.
or
They
he's
just can't.
so good that everyone wants him.
Either can't stick or wants everybody to stick.
Unbelievable. So Bruins end up going down 2-0 into the first. They come back. That power play goal, 5-on-3 in the second period, makes it a 2-1 game. Um, the Bruins actually 6-on-5. They get it done and they actually get it the tying goal, which was amazing. And then the error was just let out of the garden like a whoopee cushion when the ref decided to get involved and say, goaltender interference, no goal. And upon further review, I was frankly shocked that the call on the ice even was goaltender interference. So you got Dostal that is being aggressive on Elias Lindholm and engaging with contact twice. He gave him the blocker right to the back. And then Elias Lindholm turns around once and just gives him a little tiny what for in response. He gets hit twice, he's going to give you once, which, occurred. I'll grant that there was contact, but it occurred like 4 seconds prior to the shot going off, and Dostal had plenty of time to reset and track the puck. But it looked like that little bit of contact was enough for the refs to go ahead and deem it to be goaltender interference and no goal. So the call on the ice was that. And luckily, due to the changes in the NHL rulebook recently, this isn't going to be a scenario where, the Boston Bruins and Joe Sacco can call a coach's challenge and challenge the call on the ice to see if it is actually a goal instead of trying to wipe it off the board with a coach's challenge. Well, that was pretty cool. Shout out to the video team to go ahead and tell them to do that, and they had the goal reinstated.
I don't even wanna call it a what for that Lindy gave Dostal. It was just kinda like a, "Back up a bit. Let me get my space in front of the crease. Stop smacking me with your blocker here. Like, let me just get a little bit of space." So, I wouldn't even call it, like, retribution for the multiple just whacks in the back that Dostal was giving him. So, I was just so confused by the goalie interference call on the ice. I was apoplectic. Like, why? How? I didn't notice anything in real time. And I don't know how the refs even honestly caught that in real time. I thought Dostal had more than enough time, again, in real time, to reset, to make the save, to come across, to get vision on that puck, to get square, whatever he needed to do. Again, credit, you're right. Credit to Matt Myers, credit to the video room to say, hey, this is obviously one you should coach. I feel like even if they didn't see it in time. I feel like that's one in a situation you're down 1 goal with a minute and change remaining. Just challenge it anyway. Like, what do you got to lose? Even if you lose the challenge and you're now down on the power play and you pull and it's 5-on-5, like what do you have to lose in that situation? But thankfully, the wheel of what is goaltender interference spun in the Bruins' way because frankly, you never know at this point. Even if to us it's so obvious, you never know what the refs are going to
Yeah,
call.
it is just random. It's
So thank
welcome
God for
to
Toronto for stepping in. Thank God for the refs for making the right decision.
welcome to goaltender interference in the NHL, where the rules are made up and the calls don't matter. It's just nobody knows what's gonna go on. They just got to shake the magic 8 ball and see what it says. So Bruins score late in the third, force overtime. And this was an important point for the Bruins. If they do indeed actually end up making their way and punching their ticket, it seemed like an act of God from the hockey gods, where everything else around the league, all the teams that they're battling in playoff positioning, they all ended up losing. So the Bruins managed to get that goal late, and it looks like they have all the momentum, and it's time for overtime. And, generally speaking, the Bruins have been pretty strong in overtime scenarios this year. They've won more than they've lost. They haven't let many of them get to the shootout, which is always a plus. And we talked about this previous episode. NHL, go to 10-minute 3-on-3 overtime, please. Just set it up. Just fix it. Please, for the love of God. But I'm going to throw it over to you. You give me your thoughts on the overtime situation. I don't really know how quite to put it in words from my perspective.
I thought the Bruins had the better of the chances for the most part. Then they give up a bad turnover in the neutral zone, let Anaheim come in. The puck kind of filters to the right of Swayman, and 1, 2, 3, everybody gets caught puck watching and drifts to the puck. Swayman's covering that post, hoping there's no short side shot, and nobody sees Leo Carlson on the other circle, and the pass goes right to him. It's a wide open net. Bing, bang, boom. Game over. Charlie Coyle is basically goaltending at that point because he has to basically rush over and try and slide to cover any part of the net. But they all just got caught puck watching and slid all the way over to the puck. All 4 of them. I get Swayman has to cover his near post, but someone has to be sitting in the slot making sure that you break up any passes into the middle. I said it on. I literally just said this about Connor McDavid's goal for 5 Nations and Adam Fox. You have to cover the slot in situations like these because there's going to be someone drifting, cherry picking, waiting for that one timer for any pass that comes in there. And nobody knew it. It was terrible, 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 lazy, incompetent overtime play from everybody.
Yep. I mean, I don't. I just, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to hit the pause button on that point because we're going to transition to topics here. So, luckily, maybe happily, the Bruins only had one game that we were going to go ahead and break down that we just did. The rest of it that we're going to be chatting about is more about what was kind of gone over in the Don Sweeney press conference that went down. So, it was kind of odd for him to have media availability before the trade deadline like this. Usually it's, you know, not that case, and he just meets with the media post trade deadline. But it's obvious that the Bruins are in a different situation. Um, Don Sweeney came out, and this is definitely on the heels of a lot of the large national media reporting on Charlie McAvoy's situation. Um, that there's no timeline for Charlie McAvoy to return to the lineup, and for a team that is just in the absolute trenches right now, battling tooth and nail for every single point to try to punch their ticket to the postseason. They're already short Hampus Lindholm. Going down McAvoy for any extended period of time, that's a death knell as far as I'm concerned. Like, that is just, you were just put on death row, and it's just time that's going to be, doing you in now. So, I think it was that, combined with the update on Hampus Lindholm that he's going to be likely out for the rest of the season. That, Elliot Friedman was out in the media and he was saying, oh, the Bruins are kind of waving the white flag on the season. And I think that's the right thing to do. What was your thoughts on Don Sweeney's presser, Jake?
I hope everybody's watching on YouTube or watching on socials. It's my white flag. I'm waving it on the season. They're done. I think finally he realized he can't do any more than what he's done. Uh, they've committed so much capital over the years at the trade deadline because they've been in a win now mentality. They don't have that capital anymore. They're not in a standings position where I'm confident that even if they did go all in, they'd make the playoffs. And so finally, Don Sweeney has the cognizance to be like, okay, we're going to be cautious this time around. And to me, being cautious means, yeah, we're not really going to do much of anything unless it benefits our future. He said maybe they want to help out their draft capital. If they can somehow make minor improvements. Like, I don't even know what a minor improvement looks like to this team right now. So I guess it was a lot of beating around the bush and a lot of word salad to basically say we're done with the season. Not that we're having a fire sale and we're all ready to go, but um, thank God he finally said, we're punting. Let's focus on the future. Let's focus on building forward and, see where we go from here.
There is now only a 14.9% chance that the Boston Bruins make the postseason. So, read out of that what you will. So, probably not likely, guys. Um, Additionally, Elliot Friedman was talking about there's been some additional talks around the league regarding what the Boston Bruins are going to be doing. There's more smoke with the Trent Frederick situation. So it definitely, like you had mentioned, it seems like the Boston Bruins are strongly considering moving on from pending free agents, except for Captain Brad Marchand. There was a report that Brad Marchand wants to remain a Bruin. There's a report from not even a report. Don Sweeney said it straight up in the press conference that he wants Brad Marchand to remain a Bruin. So it's believed that those two camps are working away at an extension. I'm intrigued to know what those numbers would be because I don't know what I would want to pay a 37, 38-year-old Brad Marchand on the salary cap, even with the cap going up. But yeah, I mean, what's your overall thought? Jake, do you think that this is the right choice for the Boston Bruins right now?
I saw a good tweet about this last night during the first period of the game. That why does it seem like Brad Marchand is the only guy who brings the piss and vinegar every night? Um, he is the heart and soul of the team, and I don't think that the leadership core under him is just ready to take that mantle yet. Whether it's Pastrnak, I personally think it's going to be McAvoy who will end up being the next captain of the Bruins,
I
but
agree.
I don't think they're just ready quite yet. So I think if you can keep it under $2 million a year, with how high the cap is going, from what it sounds like in this upcoming offseason, I'm fine with it. As they need to do it in a way where he can play third line minutes. You shelter him. He's 37. Yeah, he's still doing well enough, but he gets more cold than hot nowadays. And that's nothing against him. It's just father time. But you need him and you need his energy and you need his motivation and you need his leadership to be there for these youngsters who are coming up, for whoever they bring in free agency next year, whatever they end up deciding to do, whether they decide to reset, retool, go all in, they need him to be that continuity of leadership and of Bruins culture, because it sounds like there's going to be a decent amount of change coming in some way, shape, or form, whether it's in 2 weeks or 3 months or 6 months. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of turnover. And I think you need that continuity to keep that, the good parts of Bruins culture alive in that locker room.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go ahead and send it over to our sponsors here for a brief message, and we'll be right back.
This season, the Two Pad Stack podcast is proudly supported by two fantastic local businesses. First, we're going to give a shout out to Earth Eagle Brewings, where great beer meets great company. With locations in both Portsmouth and Somersworth, New Hampshire, Earth Eagle is something for everybody. Whether you're relaxing in their Portsmouth beer garden or enjoying live music and trivia at the Somersworth pub, you'll be in good hands with their craft beers, epic hot dogs, and much more. And don't forget, if you're into brewing your own beer, their homebrew shop has you covered in Somersworth. And when it comes to tattooing, there's no better place than Vital Ink Tattoo in Barrington, New Hampshire. The artists at Vital Ink are all about turning your ideas into tattoos you'll love forever. The team works hard to make sure every visit is comfortable, and their dedication to making your tattoo experience fun and relaxing is unmatched. Whether you're getting your first piece or adding to your collection, Vital Ink is the place to go. Special thanks to both of these sponsors for supporting the Two Pad Stack podcast this season. Be sure to check them out and show them some love.
All right, so we're back. We're still talking about the Don Sweeney press conference here. The one thing that I thought was really kind of peculiar, and I wish I knew more details behind the scenes here, is about the Hampus Lindholm situation. Because obviously, I think it was back in November that he blocked that shot right into his leg, hit him right in the kneecap. It was speculated from a few different sources I had heard that it was a broken kneecap. That was confirmed in this presser, but it seemed like he was on the mend and he was returning to practice. He just actually had some I think he even shed the red no contact jersey for a practice and had, physical contact. And then he just seemed to disappear right before the Four Nations. So Bruins were starting to practice again. There was no sign of Hampus Lindholm. And then it comes out during this presser that he's going in and getting an additional procedure done as a result of his recuperation from this injury.
Yeah, from what it sounded like, one of the plates that was put in to help his knee, leg, joint, whatever, structurally recover was starting to get irritated. And obviously that's got to suck, But I guess you don't know until you put the wear and tear on it. And, he's a professional athlete. I guess any regular person would be off it for a lot longer and, let it recover. He is a pro athlete who wants to come back and make an impact on this team. And so he's putting aggressive wear and tear on it and stress on it pretty quickly. So I can understand that, it gets inflamed, and I do wish him all the best, and I hope he recovers. And, he was fantastic in the first month and a half of the season. He was probably the best Bruins player from October 5th till Thanksgiving or whenever he had his injury. So it sucks that he's out pretty much the rest of the season from what I'm gathering and what we gather. But I hope he recovers and he keeps his head up, because he knows he's a good player and that he'll be that rock again come next season. But it just so hurts this team. But maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Maybe not having Hampus Lindholm for the rest of the season was the wake-up call that Don Sweeney needed. Maybe he was relying on getting Lindy back, getting Hammer back. I have to call him Hammer. I can't call him Lindy because Elias Lindholm is now Lindy. So you get a Hammer back, you get Chuck back, you've got your top line defense pair back. And maybe Don used that as a crutch to say, we can get by on our defense and goaltending, and we can at least try and do something. He don't got any more crutches. He don't have no safety net. He's just got what he's got. And I don't want to call it crap, but it's not the caliber of what anyone was expecting this roster to be. And it's unfortunate that it was injury caused. We'll talk a little bit more about some people who we really should be mad at as far as the injuries go later on. But maybe this is the blessing in disguise that the front office needed, and that Bruins fans may have wanted, that it's time to hit the retool button or the rebuild button. This is the 2015-16. Hey, we don't have enough. We got to figure this out again. It tells me they're not going to keep Joe Sacco. It tells me maybe Don's ass is finally on the line, and he needed to finally admit it. So, thank God they're waving the white flag, because I hope that this kickstarts something better and sustainable again going forward. Because what they've done basically since Krejci went to Czech and said, "Hey, I'm gone," has been unsustainable. They haven't really thought about the long-term future, and it's finally coming to bite them in the ass.
Yeah, and on that point, something that the Boston Bruins Black and Gold faithful has been clamoring for months now is you go out, you trade Trent Frederick, you get a second round pick. You go out, you trade however other players that you want to trade and liquidate and try to get some assets. Maybe Charlie Coyle is a guy that goes and he's able to, recoup some assets. It sucks to trade, a local guy, but I mean, now's the time to retool this roster. And what do you do when you try to get those holes filled? You call up the guys that are in Providence that everybody's been wanting to get an opportunity. The Lysells, the Merkulovs, even, Max Jones, Tufty, these guys that are really just on that bubble. And we're able to call up these kids that are all still relatively young. I know that we signed them as UFAs for low cost. They're still young players. They're still upside. They're former first round picks. So get these guys an opportunity up there in the NHL. And who knows, maybe that can be what was needed from the beginning, and maybe that can actually bring that 14% back up to like maybe 40% and make this a more compelling and interesting race going into it, and get these kids some NHL playoff experience as well. So that's just me being more optimistic than anything else. I still obviously mathematically think it's probably not going to happen, but hey, we've been clamoring for more skill, more youth. Trading Trent Frederick and a few other players maybe up front is a great way to kind of force Don Sweeney's hand to do just that.
Please and thank you. And maybe it brings down ticket prices so people can actually go see the Bruins play and not pay an arm and a leg to go to TD Garden.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to afford to go to a game in a loge. That'd be cool. Anytime I go is on the balcony because that's all I can afford right now. So, um,
But you're not wrong. So Don said, someone asked whether there are going to be opportunities for guys like Merkulov and Lysell to come up. And, Don kind of gave a blanket statement like, they're playing well. And so if there's opportunities for them to come up, they'll come up. Why not? Letary was doing well when he was up. Merkulov and Lysell certainly have earned the opportunities to. Um, Michael Callahan's done okay enough
yeah,
in his time. I guess quiet is maybe a good thing for him that he hasn't had anything where I've been like, oh, I really
that's
fucking
true.
hate Mike Callahan. So I guess that's a good thing. So maybe it's time to see what these kids have finally. And just punt on the season officially. I'm calling it here. I'm punting on the season officially. I think that they should just be done. I know that proverbially they've called the white flag, but I think they literally should. And I think that they should be aggressive, not necessarily in a sale of the team, but in positioning themselves for an interesting offseason to add in the right ways.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and then like I said, just getting these kids more exposure. Fabian Lysell got one game, and I thought he looked pretty good, and then he was sent back down to Providence. I thought that he's done enough to deserve a longer look and a little bit more of a runway with NHL caliber line mates. Whether the Bruins have NHL caliber line mates for him or not, that's a story for another time. But an additional report from what Friedman was talking about this morning about the Bruins is that they're not 100% exclusively selling either. They are open to maybe bringing in a player with term rather than just bringing in any rentals. Now, I don't think the Bruins will be bringing in any rentals this year. That's not the right year for them to do that. But that was an interesting comment, and it makes me wonder if maybe Don Sweeney has some irons in the fire for one of those traditional hockey trades where you send out Trent Frederick and you bring in another player, maybe, another 24 or 25-year-old kid that needs a change of scenery. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on and what happens in the next 11 days when the NHL trade deadline arrives. I know
It's a
that
little more high profile of a move, but I want to compare that to something that happened earlier in the season with two different teams. Is Capo Caco going to the Seattle Kraken and Will Borgen going to New York. Both kind of needed a change in pace. Borgen as a third line defenseman and Caco as like a middle of the pack offensive guy, but not having his full potential being shown because he's had inconsistent ice time. They flip. Borgen's been a rock on the third line and possibly second line for the Rangers D. And Caco's become an everyday goal scorer for the Kraken. So you're right. Those moves happen and they can be successful. So maybe that is what Don needs to do. It's clearly doable. It's just, do we trust Don to do it?
That's it, right? I mean, there's a ample criticism, many of it warranted for the work that he's done, the sample size that he has so far as GM. But I do think sometimes it's a little overly critical because there have been some really good hits from Don Sweeney's scouting staff as well. I mean, you look at David Pastrnak, probably the second best player from his draft class, and that was a late first round pick. Charlie McAvoy, I'm the guy that wanted Dante Fabro. Great defenseman, not a Charlie McAvoy caliber defenseman. Like, they have good picks here. Jacob Lauko was a second round pick when he's an NHL player, not with us anymore, but still an NHL player, a regular one on a day-to-day basis. Like, there are great picks that are made by this franchise. So I don't know. I think that I'd be willing to give Don Sweeney another offseason to see what he does. He is really well regarded around the league as a top tier general manager. There's a reason why he was named Team Canada GM, and his team that he assembled with his team just won the Four Nations tournament. So I'm willing to give Don Sweeney a little bit of a leash here, see what he does this offseason. Maybe see if he acquires another first round pick. Bruins go into the draft with 2 firsts instead of the 1. That would be a nice change of pace. And hey, the Bruins' natural selection, if they miss the playoffs, they could even be in the lottery, dude. Like, they could potentially move up like right now on Money Puck, I just cited it. They have a 2.4% chance of the first overall selection. Can you imagine that? Now, granted, not an amazing draft, but still the first overall selection.
I wouldn't say not amazing. If you get that first overall pick and you get James Hagan from Boston College, the kid who is an unbelievable goal scorer, you're cooking. You're absolutely cooking there.
Higgins is a winger, yeah?
I think so.
God, I want a center so bad.
I know we need a center, but you still need that left wing. And so if you get Higgins and he can end up being a first line left wing and it pushes Zaka down, why not? I will also proverbially put on my Boston University hat here. You mentioned Charlie McAvoy and Dante Fabro. I got to see the both of them play at the same time at Boston University. I get where you're coming from. Dante and Charlie were both fantastic. Dante was maybe a little more defensively minded. Charlie was more offensively gifted, but both are fantastic. And I can understand. I was going to be happy with either or. And, you know, Dante Fabro is doing okay now in Columbus. He was on waivers from Nashville, but clearly the Bruins lucked out and have a phenomenal, the Stallion, the Chucky Bright Lights. Charlie McAvoy has been one of the best defensemen in the NHL who hasn't been recognized with Norris consideration.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I mean, another great pick that this staff has made, I'm pretty sure, this might have been actually a little bit before Don Sweeney. Dougie Hamilton wasn't one of his picks, was he?
No, I think Dougie was
That
the
was
last
Chiarelli.
of
Okay.
Chiarelli.
Got it. Okay. Disregard my point then. Irrelevant. So before we wrap up here on this segment here, another name that's kind of popped up here and there just because of his contractual status is our friend of the show, Morgan Geekie. There's been a lot of speculation about him being made available, and the media recently asked him about his thoughts on potentially leaving the Boston Bruins. And I'll have you know, Morgan Geekie just eclipsed his career high of goal scoring in this game. So he just collected his 17th goal. And despite having a rough start to the season, he's really kind of come into form in the second half of the season so far. So the media asked him about his time in Boston, and he this was his quote: "I want to be a Bruin. I'd love to be a Bruin as long as I can be. It's not up to me. I'm just going to go out there and play. I love every guy in here and everything about the organization." He's saying all the right things. And the thing is, that's a little different from Trent Frederick and maybe some of the other players that the Bruins are maybe looking at shopping, is his contractual status. He's not going to be an unrestricted free agent at the conclusion of this year. He is a restricted free agent. And once again, not like a 29, 30-year-old guy. Geekie is still young. I believe he's 24, 25 right now. So his restricted free agent status makes it easy for the Bruins to retain his rights, go to arbitration if needed to secure a contract. But I think he's a guy that we've talked about it before. I think you got to extend him right now. He's got some good chemistry with Zaka and Pasternak. And if you can keep him going on that front there, you know, sign him to a team friendly deal on the AAV, at least short term, I think that's a win for them for the next couple of seasons. But
This is also one of the things, though. Could you sell high on him and get a second round draft pick or even a first round draft pick out of him? He's playing really well. He'd be a great middle six forward for a competitive team. As much as I think he'd be a great depth piece to build around in Boston, it's one of those things like, do you keep him, or is the benefit of getting a really high piece of draft capital and clearing cap for next offseason to do something different? Like, where's the balance there? I don't know. I love Gigi. It'd be great for him to stay, but the right move could compel me to let him go.
See, but I don't put as much weight into the clearing a cap conversation as maybe I would have 5, 6 years ago. You know, with the current rate in which the salary cap is increasing on an annual basis, you know, even those deals that everybody are complaining about in Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov, they're going to look fine in 2, 3 seasons. They're going to look like they're below market price. So, you know, it's not, and maybe that ties into my point earlier where I'm like, why is nobody getting any assets for clearing cap? Because cap's about to open up for everybody, I think. So, I don't know. I think that, you know, the established chemistry that these three have, that's worth more than grabbing maybe a second or a third round pick for Morgan Geekie and throwing a dart at the board in the second and third round. You know, and historically, the chances of a second or third round player making the NHL is something like 10 to 15%. I'd rather keep the sure asset there and the guy that wants to be a Boston Bruin.
I mean, Geeks has certainly done a good job. If he stays a Bruin, I'm certainly not going to be mad. I think he's done a
Yeah.
great job, and he's grown into the player that I think a lot of people that the Carolina organization, that the Kraken organization really
Mhm.
wanted him to be, and the Bruins certainly seem to be the beneficiaries of that.
Yeah. Well, time will tell. We'll have more silly season talk next week. I'm sure there'll be more rumors. We'll have more Bruins games to break down. Before we do that, we're going to go ahead and transition right over into our studs and duds, everyone's favorite segment. I know. Jake, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with your studs and duds?
I gotcha. So my stud of the week, I know we only had one game to really work with. It's Elias Lindholm. I feel like it's been a while since we put him in there. I thought he
Yeah.
looked decent for most of that game. He gets that goal on 5-on-3. He's screening those stall on the Morgan Geeky goal 6-on-5 that ties it up. The quote unquote goaltender interference that really wasn't goaltender interference. I thought he played smart for most of that game. And so I'm pretty happy with it. And it's one of the only guys I can really say played smart. So
Mm.
good for Elias Lindholm for making my list there. My dud, I know you just said not to be hypercritical and that people get overly critical of this. I'm gonna go with Don Sweeney here as my dud. It's finally catching up to you. And I'm glad you're waving the white flag, but you've had years to make different moves, to think about, hey, we really need a number one center. Bergeron doesn't have much time left. Krejci doesn't have much time left. What are we gonna do here? There were so many opportunities missed that it's just become so pathetic to watch this team now. Like, I watched the Leo Carson goal, and I'm like, I'm not surprised this happened. I wasn't even mad. It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, just another one-time loss, and that's not what you want out of your fan base. You want that passion. You want to be like, oh crap, we really needed that point to get second place in the Atlantic or first place in the Atlantic. It's finally coming to bite him in the ass, and so it's not so much what he's done recently as much as you're right, the Zadorov and Lindholm contracts will even out over the next couple of years as the cap goes up, but it's the accumulation of all the missteps that he's taken over the years. The misdraft of 2015 that they could have got. Imagine this team with a Kyle Connor or a Matt Barzal. Not the infamous tweet of, "Oh my god, the Bruins could have Kyle Connor, Matt Barzal, and Oliver Shillington here." Even just one of those two forwards. Imagine this team with Kyle Connor, who's phenomenal for Winnipeg. Completely changes the complex of this team. Imagine them with Matt Barzal, who flies down the ice with lightning speed and scores great goals. The missteps are finally catching up to Don Sweeney. And I get that there was a period of time where, 2019, 2020-ish, where, they made the cup final in 19. They were on really great pace in 2020 until the pandemic happened. We had the best regular season of all time in Monty's first year, but that almost feels more like an anomaly to the kind of crash down the mountain that is finally coming. And so whether it's Don Sweeney or whether it's someone else, it's incumbent on whoever the GM is to be Sisyphus and have that resistance so the boulder doesn't come careening all the way back down the mountain, because this town will riot if that happens. But it's all coming back to bite him finally. And so he's my dud of the week for all his missteps that are finally coming to light and showing, the window's closing. And it shouldn't, it could have not been.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be a permanent closure of the window. It can just be propped back open, just like the Washington Capitals did this year, if Don Sweeney plays his cards right. And I think that that will happen. So time will tell, but I like those picks. I'll go ahead and jump into mine. Right off the bat, I have to start off with my stud, and that's going to be friend of the show, Morgan Geeky. Like I just did, I shouted him out, career high in goals, which is fantastic. That is really exciting for him. And I really think that he's come alive here in the second half of the season. One of the hardest shots on this team, which is surprising. It's not a guy that you maybe would think would have the hardest shot on the team. And I'm really hoping that he's able to parlay this recently strong play, like I said in a little while ago, into an extension with the Boston Bruins, or and maybe into a better spot for his career if it is not with the Boston Bruins. But happy for him. He was awesome to have on the show. I know that there's some talk about maybe having him on again, which would be a lot of fun as well. So Geeky, you're my stud of the week. Now, my dud of the week, I have a sneaking suspicion that maybe I stole this from you, Jake, and I apologize if that's the case. But I am going to put a giant magnifying glass on the Minnesota Wild training staff. Um, Really not excited about what I've heard from Boston Bruins. They've basically come out and put the magnifying glass on Team USA's trainers that the McAvoy injury was handled very, very poorly. And if you don't know this, because Bill Guerin is the GM for Team USA, or he was the GM for Team USA, he's like, oh, let's just use my trainers. I already have them on staff. They'll go work for me for Team USA. We'll get them a few extra bucks. No problem. So the Boston Bruins strongly feel that the treatment of Charlie McAvoy from his injury that he sustained against the game against Team Finland was not handled appropriately, and as a result of that, his recovery is taking exponentially longer than it needed to. But it's not just the McAvoy situation that really kind of grinds my gears with these guys. What it's going to really exacerbate it is, I mean, we heard about it last trade deadline when the Bruins went out and acquired Pat Maroon. And Pat Maroon was supposedly already cleared and returning to skating. He gets to Boston and practices here. Where's Pat Maroon? Where is he? Oh, the Bruins medical staff said he's not ready yet. He's not cleared for contact. Well, that's weird. Probably shouldn't have been traded yet if he wasn't cleared for contact. So now the Boston Bruins have two bones to pick with the Minnesota Wild training staff. They were dealt a really kind of crappy situation with Pat Maroon. That was the big reason why they didn't even extend him, is that they were still concerned about his back. And now they have to deal with the Charlie McAvoy situation. You back it up even further, non-Bruins related scenarios. And I hate Matthew Tkachuk. That's not, any news here. Matthew Tkachuk is still going to be out a long time. No official details have come out, but it's been bungled there from the Minnesota Wild training staff with him. And then you go back even further, the Kirill Kaprizov situation, that was a mess as well. Like, his recovery seemed to never be ending, and he was out for much longer than what was originally forecasted. So I really have to question, me as a trusted medical, and I don't know anything about medical stuff. I really got to question what's going on over there in Minnesota. And for that, the Minnesota Wild's doctors and training staff, you're my dud of the week.
It's a phenomenal dud pick, in all honesty. And I'm glad you picked out every single one of those cases, because one, in isolation, that sucks. Two, okay, that's a little weird. But it just seems like it's a perpetual issue that they have. Look, I hate to call people incompetent, but their medical staff is clearly on a different level, on a different wavelength than other teams. And it's unfortunate, the ripple effect that it's causing, because you're right. I hate Matt Tkachuk when he's not playing on Team USA. I loved him last week. He was my stud last week. But he's good for the league. He brings eyes. He's exactly the type of player the league wants to see. Someone who's, a great scorer, but also supremely physical, toes the line, extremely engaging, extremely fun to watch. So the league should probably be pissed off at that. I don't know how the Wild themselves aren't pissed at the Kaprizov situation. And then the Bruins have multiple reasons to be royally pissed off. Maroon, yeah, it sucks. He only played 3 games or 2 games in the regular season and then played in the playoffs. McAvoy, I'm livid at. Whether they didn't sterilize the equipment for that injection well, whether they let him immerse it in a hot tub, didn't give him clear instruction, it's incumbent on them. You take these guys into your custody, and I think you'd want to take extra care of these guys and not just be lackadaisical in your medical care. These guys are the stars of the league, so I think you'd want to take special care of these guys, really be on their asses about things.
What really surprises me is I'm surprised the NHLPA hasn't stepped in and say, "Hey, we need to investigate what's going on over here," because it's not like you mentioned, it's not an isolated incident. There's now a track record. There's a pattern here, and what's the consistent thing in the pattern? I mean, pretty obvious to me. So,
would I be surprised if the NHLPA or even the Bruins themselves filed a grievance against the Minnesota Wild for their medical mishandlings? I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yep. And with trade deadline right around the corner, you have to wonder. I mean, the Bruins and the Minnesota Wild have been a pretty frequent trade partner. You got the Maroon deal, you have the Coyle deal, you have I think did they get Johansson from them? The Lauko deal? Yeah, they are always going back to the trading well. I don't know if that's going to continue with this. I think that this probably impacts trade negotiations for the future. And one less dance partner that limits your returns and potential, selling scenarios. So, um, all right. Well, any closing thoughts before we wrap up this week's episode? We'll have a lot of Bruins hockey to talk about next weekend
Oh
or
my
next episode.
god, we're gonna have a ton of it to talk about, and I'm kind of dreading it. It's a tough week coming up. The Bruins have a tough schedule coming up, and I'm not looking forward to seeing them lose 3 of the 4 games of pretty much.
Yep. Yep. Me either. All right. Well, then we're going to go ahead and wrap up on once again a little bit of a shorter episode. Only one game to talk about. That's what's going to happen there, guys. But we'll be back next week. We appreciate your listenership. Make sure you tune in. Check out our website. We got cool merch there and stuff too. Always got our friends over at Iron and Steel Threads and SeatGeek that we've got partnerships with. Jump on our YouTube to see those banner ads, and they'll give you some nice codes to use to save some cash. So until next time, peace.